Ladies and gentlemen,
Good evening.
Are you ready?
Okay, here we go.
You're listening to the Deal Room Podcast. Join us as we bring you the inside scoop on business sales and acquisitions. Get across trends in the area and hear the industry's best recount their real-life tips, traps, and experiences. Now, here's your host, Joanna Oakey.
Hi, it's Joanna Oakey here, and welcome back to the Deal Room Podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. Now, today we're stirring things up a bit with another of our special segments. It's time for another thrilling episode of Ask Me Anything. Now, if you're new to the Deal Room Podcast, let me give you a quick rundown. Our Ask Me Anything segment is where I dive into the questions that you, our incredible listeners, send in. And not just your questions, we also feature queries from our fabulous guests and those interesting nuggets we encounter during our day-to-day practice. So here's your chance to have your burning questions answered. Email us at podcast@aspectlegal.com.au. We're eagerly awaiting your queries. And don't worry, you'll find the link in the show notes to that for easy access as well. So look, don't hold back. We're open to talking about anything and everything on this podcast, so buckle in because it's time for another thrilling edition of Ask Me Anything.
Yeah, Joanna, I was really wondering what you're seeing in the market in terms of the number of transactions that are done as business asset sales versus share sales. I think I'm seeing and hearing in the market that there is a slight increase in the number of transactions that are done under a share sale, and was keen to sort of have a bit of a chat to you about your thoughts around how to sort of protect everyone in that process in terms of ensuring that everyone involved understands the difference in value of, typically as a broker, you would appraise the value of a business based on a transfer of business assets, whereas a share sale will, still have that value as its basis, but will be a different number by the time it gets to be a share sale. And just to make sure, firstly, from a value point of view, and then from the point of view of where liability sits, etc. Obviously, if you acquire an entity, you acquire all its history, warts and all, and therefore, again, from a legal point of view, it's really important that everyone has their eyes open with respect to what happens and how liability is ascribed, pre and post transaction, that sort of thing. Are you seeing the same in the market?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say that we're seeing more share sales than we have in the past, but we have always seen a lot of share sales. So we do, and it depends the market that you're talking about. So in like the sub $1 to $2 million market, still predominantly business sales for good reason, because there's the complexity that you talk about with share sale, which is this extra body of risk that a buyer is taking on. But in that $2 million plus market, we've always had a large proportion of that market be share sales, and it's still the same. The overriding reason for that, so there can be buy-side driving reasons, sell-side driving reasons. The sell-side driving reasons are often the reason for it in that sort of say that $2 to $20 million market, and the for that smaller end of that mid market, it's driven by tax considerations in particular for sell side, because there can be big tax differences for sellers in a share sale versus a business sale. From a buyer side perspective, the driver for buyers who are particularly after a share sale versus business sale is a ease of transition of the value in the business. So that might be there might be components of value, like, for example, client contracts, client panels that the seller might have, or other elements of value in a business that can potentially leak if you have to transfer the assets one by one, which is what a business sale is all about. So we find sophisticated buyers actually aren't particularly concerned about share sales. It's more buyers who have, who themselves aren't aren't used to buying a business, or perhaps deal with advisors who have less exposure to this area, who are more concerned about share sales than the sophisticated buyers or the larger buyers. But having said that, there is no, it's really important to understand, one of the things that I've realised, you know, in the last year or so, is that brokers perhaps don't quite understand the complexity jump that happens with a share sale over and above a business sale. And there really is a complexity jump. Unfortunately, that sort of can lead to longer negotiation period once you're in contract, because we have more complex contracts generally. When we're in a share sale, we have a more stringent regime of warranties. We've got more warranties, and then we've got, more scary sounding warranties as well in a share sale environment. But the reason for that is because a buyer is protecting itself against those skeletons that it's buying, and some of those driving things are tax, or I guess dispute and litigation risk.
That sort of lower end of the market, where the sort of the bottom end of where the share sales click in, Janet, are you seeing a rep and warranty insurance being used in completing transactions at that end of the market? I know at the larger deals it's been a fixture for a long time, but are you seeing it applied to smaller deals in the, let's say, the $2 to $10 million range?
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely are. This is we've got an insurance sister company of Aspect Legal that does this type of insurance, transaction liability insurance. Actually, you perhaps didn't even know that in asking the question, but there you go. That
wasn't a blatant plug for you, no, but I'll take it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Anyway, yeah. No, it's one of the reasons we have that is because I think it's really important to this type of insurance isn't for everyone. It's not necessarily necessary for all deals, but we have certain deals where we have sellers who are particularly risk averse, or buyers who have particular concerns, and this type of insurance can be very useful in those sorts of situations. But it's as you rightly point out, it has been a feature of the mid-market deals for a long period of time. There's nothing new there, but mostly in those mid-market deals, you're talking about a very large premium. I was talking to a broker just last week, and they were talking about the last deal that they did. The premium was $150,000, so that's a lot to add on to any transaction. But usually that's buy side, so buyers will take out that insurance. The SME products that our insurance sister business deals in, it's just sell side, it's not buy side insurance, but that's not to say that a buyer can't sort of negotiate to have the seller take out the insurance, and it still acts as effectively security for them in terms of having funding backing the warranties, which is, of course, can be of concern to a buyer in relation to the protection under the warranties. But we're looking at much, much cheaper costs. So we're looking, you can get it down to as low as $10K for every mil of cover. So, of course, if you're in and that's for 7 years cover. So if you're in, a transaction where there's $1 million worth of exposure under the warranties, then you're paying $10,000 for that. Obviously, that's a completely different cost point to our $150,000 policy. So, I think it's great we find it's particularly useful, as I say, not needed in all deals by any stretch of the imagination, but really good where sellers have this real concern about the risk that they're taking on board. And, that can be that whole, can't sleep well at night element, when sellers feel that their proceeds are exposed. And so it's just that I think it's just a nice policy to help get over some of those hurdles in the negotiation of warranties.
Certainly sits on both sides of the transaction, doesn't it? Typically at the smaller end of the market, the buyer would see some risk in terms of being able to successfully claim against a warranty in terms of, whether the money's still there. So it's certainly got a valid place. And it's good to hear that it's coming down into the the smaller end. I mean, that's what I'm seeing as well. But you kind of see quite a broad spectrum of the market. So yeah, thanks.
Well, it's quite. I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting in the market, but it's a great mechanism as well for have sometimes those negotiations where a buyer wants retention or hold back, and so there's this money that's sitting on the table that's frozen effectively for 2 years, 3 years, whatever the period is. This is a great way to release that. Those funds to the seller as well. So anyway, I think it's great.
And it is great development, isn't it? It's back when I was, in my public company days, the CFO roles that I've done, the transactions tended to be, much larger, and a lot of the sorts of tools that we used in that larger, more sophisticated end of the market are finding their equivalent in the middle market, the lower middle market, which is a tremendous evolution.
It is.
I think.
It really is. Like I find it deeply exciting. I don't know. But perhaps we're sitting here a bit nerdy, Richard. I don't know, but
we're definitely sounding like that.
Anyway, fabulous.
The only other question I had for you, Joanna, was sort of a bit of a corollary as part of where we wandered into on the last question, which was again around whether you're seeing more use of at-risk components in deals. I am, and hearing again in the market that there's a greater use of earnouts and those sorts of structures in deals. I guess it relates a bit to to access to funding to complete deals, but also relates to, I guess, if we wind the clock back a couple of years and see what external events can do in terms of the risk profile of businesses. People are, I guess, understandably looking at potentially creating protection around the asset that they're looking to acquire. So are you seeing, more at-risk components in deals?
Absolutely. Absolutely we are. I would say more than 90% of our $2 million plus deals will have an earnout or some sort of at-risk component at the moment, which is astounding, actually. So almost every deal we do these days will have a component. I mean, there's still the odd one that comes in that doesn't, but mostly when we're talking about dealing with sophisticated buyers here, even first-time buyers now have found their way into the market with using a lot more of and it's smaller deals. This is the thing that really gets me. Usually it was on our side, the larger the deal, the more likely it was that it had an at-risk component or like an out deferred payment, whatever milestone, whatever it was. But I'm now seeing it leak into smaller deals quite a lot more than I ever had in the past. So we used to have, I feel like deal complexity has increased really, for the smaller deals, because there was always that complexity in larger deals, but I just feel like that deal complexity for smaller deals has, exponentially increased over the last few years.
And hopefully that's all for good reason. It probably is. And as I say, my sense it's because of a heightened perception of, future risk, etc. But I find, and again, just sort of seeking your thoughts, that it's very important to work hard with all sides of a deal to ensure that when you're structuring an earnout that you're creating a measure that is appropriate to the circumstances to which it's going to be applied. I guess in a simple sense, looking at a revenue versus gross margin versus net margin based sort of metric and figuring out what is both going to support the business, support the seller, support the buyer, and, be appropriate to the business at hand. But it takes a lot of thought, I find.
It does take a lot of thought, and I'm finding that is actually taking a much larger component of the contract negotiation these days as opposed to what it used to take, which is interesting because you used to spend the bulk of our time, particularly in share sales, but also in business sales over a particular transaction size in warranties and indemnities. Like that used to be where we'd spend a lot of time. Now it's almost like that bulk of time is taken out by the earnouts and, and warranties, indemnities sort of sit second on that, contract negotiation list. So anyway, that's how I feel it's sitting.
Oh, great. Thanks for that.
Huge thank you for coming on to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you, Richard. Well, that's it for this episode of the Deal Room podcast. We hope you're now primed for your next deal with these pointers and have enjoyed these fascinating insights. Now, if you'd like more information about this topic, then head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com, where you'll be able to download a transcript of this episode, as well as access any contact details and any other additional information we referred to in today's podcast. Now, if you'd like to get in contact with our guests today and the services they offer, you can go ahead and check out our show notes for a link right through to them and their details. You can also book in directly with our legal legals at Aspect Legal if you'd like to soundboard your next steps, discuss a legal question, or find out more how we can assist, whether that's with buying or selling a business, or perhaps somewhere in between. Now, don't forget to subscribe to the Deal Room podcast on your favourite podcast player to get notifications whenever a new episode is out. We'd also love to hear your feedback, so please leave us a review and rating if you're already one of our subscribers, or even if you're listening to this podcast for the very first time. Every review helps our team produce valuable content for you. Well, thanks again for listening in. You've been listening to Joanna Oakey and the Deal Room podcast, a podcast proudly brought to you by our commercial legal practice, Aspect Legal. See you next time. Aspect Legal has a number of great services that help businesses prepare for a sale or acquisition, to help them prepare in advance and to get transaction ready. We've also got a range of services to help guide businesses through the sale and acquisitions process. We work with clients both big and small and have different types of services depending on size and complexity. We provide a free consultation to discuss your proposed sale or acquisition. So see our show notes on how to book a time to speak with us, or head over to our website at aspectlegal.com.au.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Thanks for listening to the Deal Room podcast. To find out more about this episode and other episodes in the series, check out the show notes or head over to our website at thedealroompodcast.com.au.